But I don't want comfort. I want God. I want poetry. I want freedom. I want real danger. I want goodness. I want sin. And what he's really saying here is, hello lovely people, welcome back to the farm. Today I'm going to be accompanied by my lovely daughter, Hadassah. Say hello, Hadassah.
Hi.
She's enthusiastic about the work that we're going to do today. We're going to go around and do some chores. You need to drive. So we've changed the name of the channel to Freewarden, and this is now Freewarden Farm. What does that mean? Well, before I can even explain to you what that means to us, I have to describe the problem that Freewarden is the solution to. The problem is this addiction to a delusion that comfort and convenience can be secured and maintained and called up like that on a silver platter without assuming any responsibility, without assuming any risk yourself. Now, I'm not saying throw caution to the wind. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm not saying live your life like a crazy person, don't worry about risks. No. What I am saying is that this delusion that we can somehow secure peace and comfort and convenience and an easy life without assuming or taking on any duty, responsibility, risk for ourselves is just that. It's a delusion. And when you're talking about a delusion, this is what you're talking about. A perceived reality that is so real to a person, they have been taken captive by it, and they cannot but believe in this alternate reality, right? That's where I'm looking at this as, how do you snap people out of this? Or better yet, how do you help them avoid the delusion altogether? Now, having raised children, I can guarantee you that they are born with this idea that life can be easy and simple and you can avoid all risk to yourself. You don't have to take on any of that in order to achieve or to realize real lasting peace, prosperity, comfort, and convenience. And that is just simply not true. And we have to train that out of our children. They come into this world believing that everything is just owed to them, that they deserve anything and everything that they want. This is the problem that we find ourselves in today, that people have not been trained out of this from a young age. They have been trained that you can secure some sort of utopia if everybody just figures out the system and they give up personal agency and they give up their own rights, their own freedoms, their own liberties. Somehow, in some way, some utopian leader is going to usher us into a new paradise, a new perfect age, that we are going to overcome the limitations of nature and our own body and agriculture, that we're going to somehow bend this to our will. It doesn't have to make sense, it just needs to be the ideal set forth by the omnipotent potentate, the leader, the dictator, that says, I have a dream. And this dream is for you to all live in peace and prosperity without ever having to worry about sickness, without you ever having to worry about hunger, without you ever having to worry about any need, any bodily need that you could want. All that you need to give this utopian leader, who will usher you into the utopian paradise that he promises, is to give up your personal agency, is to give up your personal freedom, the freedom of other people. Right? It's kind of funny how this works. If you start giving away your freedoms, you're actually also giving away the freedoms of others. All of this stems from a very selfish, self-centered worldview, a narcissistic worldview that my life, what's good for me, is more important than anybody else's welfare or best good. And they don't have a care for anybody else or anything around them. They'll even accuse people who are concerned about personal freedom, personal agency, responsibility, taking care of oneself and those around them. They'll accuse them of being selfish. freedom is not free, it is not easy. Truly, the essence of freedom and liberty is found in hardship. It is found in taking on responsibility for yourself and those around you and saying, I'm going to put in the hard work of doing what needs to be done to better my life and the lives of those around me. I'm going to become a productive member of society. I don't have to. It would be better, far better for me if I just look after my own self and look after my own needs. But I'm going to put myself aside and my own personal interests, my own interests aside for the better interests, for the greater good of society. That doesn't mean that you give up your neighbor's liberty and freedoms so that they can be taken care of by Big Brother or big government. That means sometimes you do what you would rather just kind of shove off onto the plate of this grandiose leader, this one who is going to usher us into the age of perfection and paradise, where we no longer have to worry about anything. To summarize then, in a nutshell, the problem is people are selfish. People naturally will only think about themselves and their best interests to a fault. They are self-destructive. This is the problem that we are addressing. This is the problem that we are seeking the solution to. The solution, as I see it, is you train those within your sphere of influence, whether it's your family, your friends, your neighbors. You show them an example of what it is to be a person who lives in reality. You cultivate an environment of freedom, of responsibility, where you allow people to experience risk and reward. And you can provide safety nets because you don't want your children going off and being injured. You don't want somebody that you care for being hurt because of bad decisions. But you also allow them enough agency and enough freedom to have experiences with bad decisions, to make mistakes. We want to engender and cultivate this environment that does not lend itself and does not itself cultivate and encourage narcissistic behavior, beliefs, and tendencies, but rather puts weight a little bit at a time and a little bit more, the weight of life, the weight of personal agency, on those that are in our charge, those that are in our sphere of influence. And we want to encourage good behavior. We want to encourage competition. We want to encourage hard work and reward in kind for that hard work. There are probably other ways to do this besides buying a farm and getting a bunch of animals and raising your own food. Maybe there are. Maybe there are better ways of doing it. I'm sure that there's a bunch of different ways that you could do this, but this is what I know. This is close to the way that I was raised. And I know that that worked. That taught me a work ethic. That taught me to take responsibility for myself. That taught me to be responsible for other people. Teaching children responsibility requires actually laying that responsibility on their shoulders and saying, here, this is yours now. You own this. But it doesn't just end with child rearing. It continues on through life. You can slip out of the good habits that you were trained to adopt, and you can fall into bad habits. We didn't have to do what we're doing. We didn't have to raise our own meat. It'd be far easier just to get it from the butcher, just to get it from the grocery store, just to get it from a farmer. It's far easier to rely on that system, and that's not a bad system. We need that system, and I'm glad that we have it. However, we wanted to subvert our own personal tendencies towards selfishness, laziness, and put ourselves into a position where we couldn't help but work hard, where we couldn't help but strive and struggle. This isn't easy. There is a lot of work that goes into this. And I think that anytime anybody takes on more than what they've been doing, it's a good thing. It stretches you. It helps you grow as a person. It's a good ethical thing to try to do hard things. And you shouldn't ever look down on that. But we're not just doing this for ourselves. Yeah, it was something that we wanted to do, but it was also something that we wanted to do for our children. We wanted to show them an example, to exemplify for them what hard work and the reward of that hard work can be, how satisfying it can be. Yeah, it would be far easier just to get our lamb from the butcher. But how much more satisfying is it to know that you raised that lamb, you kept it on pasture, you provided it with water and minerals, you provided it with nutrition, and it is now providing you with dinner. It's on your plate, and you are eating the produce, you're eating the fruit of the labor of your hands. There's really nothing that I can say to communicate how satisfying and how fulfilling that is. It's got to be experienced. And that's why we want our children to have this experience. We want them to understand that hard work does pay off. Hard work put into a lamb that is then transformed into dinner on your plate is far more fulfilling than any side of lamb, any cut of lamb that you could eat at a restaurant or get from the grocery store and cook up yourself. It's just not going to be the same. The solution to the problem is to show how empty and hollow the delusion is. The delusion of instantaneous, effortless convenience and comfort. This is empty. It's sterile. It's been sanitized, and all risk has been removed from it. Therefore, you've not had to struggle for it. You've not had to fight for it. Its value is going to be far less than what it would otherwise be if you did have to put some effort, and you did have to put some fight, and you did have to put some time and energy and labor into it. And if there was that possibility that you could lose it, how much more fulfilling and satisfied will you be with it? How much more enjoyment are you going to receive from that reward when it is hard earned, when it is well earned, hard fought for, and now it is in your grasp? It doesn't mean that you're always going to win. You are going to fail, and there is going to be that time or two that things just go terribly. It's happened to us, and it will happen again. But the joy and the fulfillment of receiving that good reward for your work is beyond anything that can compare. And that's the solution. Showing people, children, friends, neighbors, family, showing them a better picture. You know, as I've been talking about this, it's reminded me of a passage from New World Order by Huxley, in which the dictator character, Mufastamand, approaches another character, John the Savage, who lives wildly and lives free. He approaches him and he appeals to him saying, come back to the comforts of civilization, the convenience of civility. But to this, John the Savage replies, but I don't want comfort. I want God. I want poetry. I want freedom. I want real danger. I want goodness. I want sin. And what he's really saying here is, I want to live life as it was meant to be lived. I want to live free. I want to live to make the choices that I want to make, even if that makes me unhappy. I want to have been able to have made that choice. And Mufastamand gets it. And so he replies, what you're claiming is the right to be unhappy. Defiantly, the savage replies, fine, I'm claiming the right to be unhappy. Those who understand this, who get it, who embrace it, they will never fall prey to the delusional fantasies and the wild deception of those who would tempt them to believe that there is such a thing as instantaneous, riskless, effortless convenience and comfort. There is always a cost, and the cost of personal liberty, of personal agency, of freedom, is far too great a cost. When you lose that, you lose your personhood. That is being taken from you as something that is an essential part of you. There is nothing worth giving that up. So how do we fend off and protect and guard against these lies, these deceptions, these forgeries? We do it by engendering and cultivating an environment in which freedom lives and in which freedom rejoices, in which free individuals take on risk and hard work, and they turn the dirt and they turn the soil over by their hands, and they care for the animals with their own hands, and they harvest the fruits of their labors at the end of the year, all of that hard work culminating in the joyous celebration and in gratitude for what we have received. And this is the beautiful picture, the solution that we are attempting to paint for our children, to secure the gifts and the blessings of freedom and liberty, of personal agency, of responsibility, of taking on risk for one's own self, and reaping a beautiful and good reward. But these things are always at risk of being taken away from us. And that is why freedom must be guarded, it must be protected. And those who would take freedom from us, who would strip us of our liberties and of our rights, of the agency of choice to be unhappy, who would tell us that we are not allowed to claim the right to be unhappy, they must be warded against. And this is a never-ending struggle, it's a cycle. So as we look around us though, we see just how much this society has decayed and how much freedoms we've given up. And we look around and we go, yeah, but how can doing something on such a small scale affect everything else that's going on around you? Aren't you just becoming insular and cutting yourself off from the world by going out to your little farm and living life like that? Well, you could look at it that way, but the way that I look at it is there is another way that we can affect change and that we can speak truth to power. And that is by speaking truth to our children, to our family, to our friends, to my spouse, and she back to me, to those who are within our sphere of influence. Speak and live truth in the face of and in spite of the power that is seducing them to believe something contrary to the truth and contrary to reality, for the sake of stealing from them their rights, their liberties, their personal agency, and their right to the claim to be unhappy. Of course, we aren't unhappy, but we don't want anybody coming in and telling us that we don't have the right to do this because it could make us unhappy. So ultimately, we want a constant reminder for ourselves and for others that freedom is not free. It is always at risk of being taken away from us, and it must constantly be guarded. We must keep a constant vigil over our freedoms, over our liberties, and guard against those who would say, but if you give up just a little bit, look at how much more you could receive. Look at how much more you would be fulfilled and satisfied, even though that would be a hollow, sterilized, unfulfilling existence. This is why in previous videos I've said, remember, life is for living, not just for existing. Because that is one of the lies that we have been taught, is to settle for existing and not to truly live, because that's dangerous. Truly living, well, you could die. But guess what? Just existing, that's no life at all. I would rather die than to just exist. I want to live to the fullest and in whatever capacity I'm capable of. And I want my children to live, and I want what's best for them. Now, I could go on, and we could talk round and round about this all day long, but ultimately, we want a constant reminder that freedom needs to be guarded, and that freedom is worth it. The results, the rewards, the fruits of our labors that come from an environment in which we live free. A life lived in liberty, in the pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness, this is worth it. It's worth it all. And I would never say any different. Never, ever say any different. Regardless of what befalls me, regardless of what may come. So when it comes right down to it, we want to share with you and with others what lives lived in the pursuit of freedom, guarding freedom, keeping a vigil over freedom can really look like, and how beautiful it can be. That doesn't mean that it doesn't come without its downs. It doesn't come without failure. It doesn't mean that you never have your dark days, but how much more fulfilling are those days on which you succeed, having struggled against everything that is against you in life. We're cutting things out of our lives that don't lend themselves to that pursuit of a higher good, of a higher ideal. So for better or for worse, I don't know what you think about it. I don't really care. We're glad to have you here if you'll have us, and we'd invite you to continue with us on this journey. You're welcome to this little sneak peek that we give you into our lives, and we're happy to have you here. So whether you're just here for the animals, or you're here for the farm vlogs or the equipment, whether you're here for rotational grazing, or whether you're here for homesteading, whether you're here just to get a little peek into somebody else's life. We're glad to have you, and we're looking forward to the journey ahead, and we hope that you join us for that as we experience the adventures, whether they're the highlights of life or they're the mundane low points of life. We want to go on this journey with you, and we want to keep sharing just how good and just how sweet freedom and choice and agency can be. So from Freewarden to all of you, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. You all have a great rest of your day, and don't forget, friends, stay free.